Hi, I'm Brenda, and my latest novel is titled His Selachian Majesty Requests, Sharks, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. It is set in 1979. Cam is a third-tier pop star who, through a complex inheritance process, has become king of Singii, an island nation in the South China Sea, which has gotten him into trouble with communist China. I should add that he thinks about his alcoholism as Captain Hook and he himself being Peter Pan. Cam woke confused, groping for the familiar. A chunk of time had evaporated. Where was he? He recognized his clothes, the jeans and faded tee, and oh God, he recognized how he felt. His head throbbed, a slow, relentless pounding. His stomach quivered, ready to revolt, and the crotch of his jeans was sodden from a childish accident. The slightest motion made the room teeter, so he had to screw his eyes tightly shut. This was the worst hangover of his life. What had he drunk? He couldn't remember. A blackout, very bad. While he wasn't paying attention, Captain Hook had grabbed the wheel. He must have swilled himself into unconsciousness, a bestial stupor. The shame was scorching. He'd done it now, trashed everything, fallen from the heights to the depths yet once more. He'd crawled back into his prison and clanged the door behind himself. He would have wept, except that any motion would make him hurl. He lay on his side, curled around the knot of snaky queasiness in his middle. Something was wrong with his arms, his hands. He risked a peek at them, but everything spun so that the cold sweat ran slantwise down his brow. He huddled perfectly still until the hangover retreated a little. It might have been 10 minutes or 10 hours. Finally, he ran a trembling fingertip over whatever it was. It felt like plastic, a long strap looped around each wrist and locked in the middle with a plastic bar. Some kind of restraint. Was he in jail? Perhaps the cops had thrown him into the drunk tank and they were letting him stay here to sober up and learn his lesson. His agent had done that at least once, but that had been in Atlanta or Abilene, some U.S. town. Jail in Hong Kong wasn't going to be like that. It would be no fun at all. He slept or slipped into unconsciousness again. He knew time had passed because his body was making demands. He was thirsty and he needed to pee again. Unsteady, with many panting pauses, he rolled to his hands and knees. Only then did he rediscover the zip tie, which made crawling difficult. He blinked, muzzily. He was in a small, stuffy room, totally unfamiliar. There was a bed, a bare wooden floor, and dingy walls. Hot sunshine poured through the uncurtained window. There was a wooden door closed and another door ajar. Crawling was definitely annoying, and he used the wall to steady himself and rise, wavering to his feet. The open door gave onto a tiny bathroom. Unzipping his fly was just possible in his restraints. He had to drink from the basin's tap. The water ran warm and rusty, and he gulped it down too fast. His stomach rebelled at the metallic taste, and it all came up again. He retched for what felt like an hour, and then sagged to the floor, his head pounding. The gritty tile pressed into his cheek as he wept. Another chunk of time passed, because the window out in the bedroom wasn't sunny anymore. There was still enough light for him to drag himself up to the basin again. This time the swallow of water stayed down. He steadied himself over the sink and drank more deeply. Then he reeled out to the bed and collapsed onto it. Everything shut down, the lights, the amps, the mics. When Cam went live again, he felt almost better. The nausea and shakes had dialed down to a dull mutter. His head still ached, but less like bongo drums, more like a hi-hat cymbal. Tense, but merely atmospheric. Again, he discovered the unpleasant novelty that his hands were constrained. The stink of his own urine and sweat was strong. He opened his eyes and was astonished to see he wasn't alone. The fuck? Who are you? The older Asian woman in a black Chanel skirt suit said, Sammy, watch your mouth, okay? A large Chinese man hauled Cam up by the slack of his t-shirt and slapped him across the face, hard enough to jingle his brains. Then he dropped him on the floor. Too stunned to break his fall with his encumbered hands, Cam hit his chin and saw stars. Let's begin again, the woman said, in Chinese, although it's very hard to believe it. You are Camlet Si, King of Singii. I am Marcy Zhang. Cam levered himself up to a sitting position, his head throbbing. He didn't think he could stand, but he replied in Chinese, Do I know you? The hoarse voice didn't sound like his own. She clicked her tongue in annoyance. Stupid boy, your cousin, Miss Si, introduced us. Cam's brain refused to engage. Too old to be a groupie. Women who wanted sex with pop stars were always young and stupid. They never wore boxy skirt suits and a string of pearls. A genuine fan, perhaps? You want an autograph? Sammy sputtered with laughter. The other man, equally big but with a more Southeast Asian cast to his browner features, said, He's not out of it yet, Tai-Tai. Maybe tomorrow. That reminds me, Bai-Yun. Don't tell Yifan or Jin. That applies to you too, Sammy. Of course not, Tai-Tai. Bai-Yun and Sammy nodded. She turned back to Cam. I am Zhang Yongji's wife. Aha, now you remember. This rock and roll, it must rot your brain. He left for Beijing to discuss what to do about you. Then you went past us in the cafe at breakfast. Bai-Yun had the Rohypnol, so we seized the opportunity. It's in all the papers, your drink and drugs, so no one will be surprised. He was boggled. You kidnapped me? What for? You are a big pain. She used the English for that. A nasty, bossy boy. You were not brought up right. Zhang was so angry. But now, thanks to me, he has an interesting opportunity. What if you defect to China? Huh? That would be nice. Or, if that's more trouble than you're worth, we could disgrace you. You're found next week, dead drunk in a gutter in Kowloon, for instance. He lied valiantly. I'm dry now. She made a contemptuous exhalation through her perfectly lipsticked mouth and flapped a manicured hand. Sammy brought out a fifth of Johnny Walker Red and set it on the nightstand. At the sight, Cam reeled, not with nausea, but with bitter, hateful desire. Oh, God, he could use a drink. Mrs. Zhang read his face and smiled. We need do nothing to you. You will do it to yourself. He denied her the triumph of assent. He would destroy himself, yes, but he didn't have to admit it. Could you? What? I'd like my hands free, he said hoarsely. I can't twist open the bottle like this. He held out his hands in the zip ties. I can't even use the bathroom, unless you let Sammy here do the toilet paper for me. Sammy looked pained. Bai-Yun snickered, but Mrs. Zhang nodded. You cannot escape. This house is the only one on this island, and there's a hostage for your good behavior. A hostage? That tall white man, your assistant. He climbed right into the van with you. So, he's here, but you will not see him, huh? I don't believe you, Cam quavered. How could Jerry be so stupid getting sucked into this? Bai-Yun pulled a red booklet out of his pocket. Only when he held it out, open to the right page, did Cam realize it was a passport, Jerry's Swiss passport. The solemn, lean countenance in the photograph was instantly familiar. So, you be good, okay? Mrs. Zhang rose and gave him a little finger wave. Give trouble, run away, and bad things will happen to this Gerhardt fellow. Sammy will bring you some lunch later on. Yes, untie his hands, Bai-Yun. Bai-Yun had some kind of tool that released the plastic ties in moments. Sammy shook his head regretfully at the bottle of scotch. What a waste. Then they followed Mrs. Zhang out. He heard the door locks, first the knob, then a more serious snick of a deadbolt, and finally the slide of a big bolt on the outside. Cam crept up onto the bed again and pulled the pillow over his head. He was damned, lost forever. It was only a matter of time. He couldn't hold out. Captain Hook would make Peter Pan walk the plank, just like yesterday. Cam sat bolt upright, even though his head throbbed. What had the old bat said? He parsed it out, squeezing memory for each fact. She had introduced herself. She had mentioned that her husband had gone to Beijing to explain the debacle of his speech. Then she'd taken her heavies down to the Hilton Cafe for breakfast, where she had seen him as he passed, vulnerable, alone. And then he whispered it aloud. Bayun had the Rohypnol. He was sure that was what she'd said. She had not pronounced the name the way he would, but he recognized the familiar word. Benzos, roofies, were a popular recreational drug, easy to acquire, not illegal, like pot or snow or horse. They'd never been good for Cam, but others did them. Roofies would put you to sleep when not even quaaludes would. And men used roofies at frat parties and bars. A pill slipped into a girl's drink would lay her out flat, helpless and unable to remember what happened to her. It was the go-to date rape drug. Wow, he hadn't been drunk at all. Hook wasn't involved. Suddenly he felt great, full of joy. He jumped to his feet, ignoring dizziness and headache, scorching guilt and bitter shame. It wasn't his, not his fault. He'd been drugged. A roofie slipped into his orange juice. It was like a tap on his shoulder, a sudden awareness at his back. He didn't dare to turn. That bottle of scotch was there, waiting for him on the nightstand. Without hesitation, he went into the bathroom and shut the door. He climbed into the narrow bathtub and lay down, shuddering as the cold porcelain pressed into his bare arms and cheek. He'd sleep here, live here, never come out. He could feel it now, Hook's raging thirst. The moment he relaxed, the villain would grab the wheel and he'd be lost. It was impossible. He could not stay clean. Through the thin door, he heard the locks unlocking, the door opening. Either Sammy or Bayun shuffled around the outer room, presumably setting food down. Then he tapped on the bathroom door. "You okay in there, King?" "Yeah, my gut's messed up." "It happens." He went out, and Cam heard the locks turning and the bolt shooting home. He must have slept. He woke aching from the hard porcelain. In the narrow confines of the tiny bathroom, his own smells were very noticeable. He sat up and reached for the bathtub taps. The rusty water gushed cold onto his sneakers, his jeans. He caught the flow in his hands and drank deeply. Then he watched the water level creep up his legs, darkening the denim. When the water got up to his waist, he cut it off. Fully clothed, he slumped down into the only water there was. The tub was so small, his bent knees stuck up. At last he could think. The roofie hangover lasted a day or two, but now it was over. Gotta eat eventually, go out there, look the devil in the eye. He stoked that spark of courage. I am his Selachian Majesty, he told himself. Shark Lord, Cobra-marked king. I survive hits that nobody else can take. Jerome sings to me and I sing back. And, I wrote a song that hit number 24 on the Billboard charts. He sat up, streaming water, and pulled the sodden tea over his head. Then the sneakers and the jeans. He had no luggage, no fresh clothes, but there was nobody to see. He climbed out, leaving his clothes in the brownish water. There was only a single inadequate hand towel, threadbare and too small to tie around his waist. He mopped himself in it and staggered out. It was day again. Light pouring through the uncurtained window. He went across and hauled the sash up. The humid morning air made him realize how close and rank it was in here. There was no screen. Outside was a token balcony, iron railings along a ledge wide enough to hold flower pots. He climbed out over the sill. He was on the third floor looking down into a wide courtyard. No escape was possible. Cam turned his face up to the light and drew a deep breath. Then he climbed back inside, over the sill, and confronted the enemy. Pan would always fight this one, and every time he had to win. But he could fight it, one battle at a time. Cam reached and grabbed the bottle by the neck. This was the moment when his muscles wanted to slide into the easy old pathways. He had to control that, hang on to the wheel. He watched them as with practiced skill, his fingers twisted the cap off the bottle. He threw the cap aside, but gripped his arm before he could lift the bottle to his lips. He was actually doing that, using his left hand to hold his right arm down as he walked into the bathroom. The mirror above the sink was leprous and peeling, with a single naked light bulb above. In the reflection, he looked like hell. Stubble was shadowy on his cheeks and chin, and long, damp hair hung over hollow, dark eyes. He met his own gaze. There was a streak of mental illness in the family, but in the reflection, Cam's eyes glinted green, a glimpse of someone he knew. It wasn't Pan, nor Hook. "This is I. Me," he told his reflection. "I am Cam, doing this." Using both hands, carefully and deliberately, he upended the bottle over the sink. Expensive Scotch whiskey glugged out. The smell made him twitch so that the bottle clattered against the sink's edge, but he didn't falter as the liquor gurgled down the drain.